was last year. So that's the beginning question is, we didn't know our yield, we don't necessarily know what we planted. So keeping track of that is something we're going to do this year. We did save some of the potatoes last year, so we have some of our own seed potatoes, particularly in the fingerlings and the purple majesty. But Karen picked up for us a brand of yellow potatoes, we have white potatoes, and then we have the ever popular Yukon Golds. So this process started with how do we grow more in the space that we have, that's why we're going vertical, and how do we make sure we harvest everything we have, which is why we're going above ground. Plus we have very low water table here, so we think that we lost some of the potatoes to rot, depending on how deep the plants were planted and how deep the tubers grew. So above ground, the plants, the seed will actually go in the ground and take advantage of our good soil, but we're trying to get the plant and then the tubers to be above ground.
Because the seed, remember, is the base where the roots come out, and everything above it is where the potato forms.
Right.
So the potato that we harvest will be above ground?
Yes.
Yeah.
What keeps it from getting green and weird?
Straw and the containers that we'll have.
Oh.
Okay. So 2 weeks.
But not exposed to the air.
Yeah. So 2 weeks ago, we took the seed potatoes and we cut them to, we put them out in warmth and light so that you can see that they've started. So this is how we get a start on the season. And we did not do that last year. So something new, it's called greening. That's why there were potatoes in the greenhouse. We took last year's seed potatoes, just laid about in the greenhouse so they had light and warmth. And then 2 days ago, I cut them.
And
Carl.
oh, you cut them after they green.
Yes, first greened them so that you knew which eyes were viable. Then we cut them to about the size of a chicken egg because they will need that much nutrient to get a start as the root systems go. So you don't want to cut them too small. So we learned that. And some of them are small enough, these greened in the greenhouse, that we didn't cut them. Right, they're already the right size. And you don't cut the tubers, the fingerlings. Okay.
You wouldn't break that into.
Well, this one probably should be broken. We'll do that.
But generally the fingerlings don't get broken
Right.
because they're smaller.
But this is a great example of what can happen to all of our potatoes if we don't keep them watered. Lack of water will stress the potato. It will stop growing the tuber. And then if you water, it will grow another tuber. And so we could have some of these varieties come out looking like this. Right? So our soil is good enough. Inconsistent watering. So the Nightshade team is going to have to really be on the watering and work with the water team on a design when they lay out the watering system that ensures that the potatoes do not dry out. Because when that plant stresses and it stops producing and then it starts again, all of our potatoes could look like this, and that's not
It's
great
harder
potato.
to clean and harder to use culinary.
Okay, so the methods that we're using, we're going to grow in straw bales for the first time. And so we put those out a week ago so that we are conditioning them now. They have been being watered all week. And starting this week, we will add fertilizer to them. And I'm going to have Renee talk about how she's going to monitor the straw bale and make sure it's ready for us to plant in.
You add fertilizer to what?
The
The
straw bale.
soil in the center?
The straw bale itself.
No, Renee will talk about it. Okay. And, but then you'll see we're going to use tomato cages. We built some round cages, and then we're using discarded tires that we got from Tillamook Tire. And my source for the different methods for going vertical was the Oregon State Extension website. And they are proponents of using tires in cool season climates because the tire will retain warmth. And so we're going to take, we have 3 rows for potatoes. We're going to plant one variety in each of the rows and then the fingerlings in the back. And this way we'll be able to see, did they respond to being in the tire, being in vertical, being in a cage, being in straw? Okay, so Renee, want to talk about how we know our bales are going to be ready?
It's pretty much the same as a compost pile. It's basically a composting process. So you're going to sprinkle the fertilizer on top and water it thoroughly in. And then when, you just wait and you can check the temperature either by using the compost thermometer or just by hand. So if it feels cool enough that you could keep your hand in there and it, you know, feels reasonable, then that's usually an indication. But thermometer,
It's an
since we
indication
have
of
it,
what?
Hmm?
It's an
It's not
indication
too
of
hot.
what?
that it's been in place.
That the decomposition
Yeah,
has
you don't want,
stopped
you don't
and
want
it's
to
got
cook
too
your
hot.
potatoes.
Got it.
So,
Delay
well,
it.
it's true.
Till later.
Until you're harvesting them and then, yeah. So it is just a matter of,
So basically, you're just
Compost.
creating a compost in the bale,
yeah.
in place, in situ.
And so you leave the strings on and everything?
Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna go out and take a look, huh?
Okay,
And when it's ready, you just dig, it'll be soft enough, you just dig down and you put your potatoes in. And we'll just take it from there, we'll see.
And so this is all gonna be done more scientifically this year, so we'll really have an idea of what is the most productive methodology, and then we can replicate that in future years.
Yeah.
The other thing that, I'm not sure if you mentioned, I just didn't listen well, but the potatoes, the different varieties, there's an early, middle
I'm just
season.
getting
Oh,
there.
okay,
Okay,
thanks.
so the potatoes that are going in the rows are all maturing at 60 days or longer, the fingerlings up to 120 days. What that means is that planting today, we should be able to start harvesting around the 4th of July. The exception to that are going to be the Yukon Golds. So we're going to put these in the permaculture garden. They are a short season, somewhere between 40 and 60 days, they will be ready. So we'll have to watch that as a separate area of the garden. They don't grow as tall, they don't have as many tubers, they do one set of tubers, that's why they're an early maturing variety. So we're gonna put them in the permaculture.
Okay.
Yep, and in theory, rule of thumb, 2 pounds of potato seeds is 50 pounds of potatoes.
So did you weigh these?
I did.
Good. Awesome, I knew you would.
So I want to, when we harvest every week, I want to track the weight of what we harvest before we
even share them out.
share them out, and see what we did by variety and see if that rule of thumb, so that when you say more potatoes, we know what that really means in terms of space and.
So Sheila and Lark, if you can make sure Lori knows that too.
Okay.
They're our harvest team, so.
Yeah.
And a question, because I'm usually here on Saturdays, is there a place where we can document that? I mean, where is that gonna be so we can document, if we
Well-
get potatoes on Saturday?
Well, what we typically do is the solanaceous family will tell us when it's time to harvest. We'll harvest them we have always harvested on Tuesday for that,
Okay.
and then we leave some in boxes.
Okay, cool,
Right.
Yeah, that way they'll be able to measure. That
Great.
takes away that unknown.
okay,
Right.
great.
And in theory, at the end of the season, when we harvest the last of the potatoes, we'll be able to do what last year's team did, set aside our own seed potatoes and not have to purchase them.
Although that can be dangerous,
Mm.
depending upon funguses and that sort of thing. With the fingerlings, there's not as much of an issue for whatever
Okay.
reason, is what I've read. But,
We
Okay.
don't want the Irish potato light, or
Right.
whatever it's called.
Do we have
Right.
any volunteers out there?
yes, and we dug them and I ate them. Actually, I dug the ones and ate them. Somebody else got some last Tuesday. They were in here.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Did you guys, so you two got potatoes, you know, you gotta be quick.
Right.
It's
So
like-
But I had
Yeah, there was like
like,
this
maybe a dozen about this
Yeah.
big.
There's one other
There were
area.
maybe 4 dozen.
Yeah, there's one other area of last year's potatoes that did not get harvested yet, I believe. There is a raised bed with a wire cage around it that's out in the orchard area, and you'll see there's potatoes there. They'll be small unless you wait for them to start flowering. When you see that they're flowering, then you know that there's new tubers. And when the green starts to die away, they can be harvested if you're gonna eat them right away. If you're gonna store them, then you'll need to leave them out where the skin can harden before you start storing them.
There's good storing potatoes and not so good storing potatoes. Anything with the really soft skin, like the Yukon Golds, are not good storing. The russets are good storing, that's why you have them in the grocery store, you know, the run-of-the-mill potato. And the reds are kind of in between.
Can I just, yeah, I have a question. So when you leave them out to harden, do you put them in a dark space with air circulating
yeah.
around?
Yeah,
or-
they have to be.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be dark, but it needs to be not in direct sun.
Right, okay.
Which kills me when the Manzanita grocery used to have organic potatoes, which means they're not treated with the stuff to prevent them from eyeing. and then they'd have them outside with no cover on them. It's like, and you scrape the skin, it's all green underneath, which is actually toxic, and you're not supposed to eat that green stuff.
Well, there's actually a couple of
Until
beliefs
it's
in
cooked-
that.
until it's cooked,
It's a couple
anyway.
of beliefs on that is it toxic or is it just really bitter?
Oh,
You know,
Right.
so it's hard
And
to say.
you can peel
But
it
yeah,
off.
cook them first.
You peel it off, it doesn't,
Yeah.
it just reduces the yield you get out of a single potato.
There's a question over here.
So, when we buy seeds, you said you wanted us to buy certain types because they wanted to be safe, and I forgot the name, is something to do with the bee maybe? You gave us a name, make sure the seed package says.
In relation to potatoes or everything?
No, this is seeds. On potatoes, I stood there at the counter drooling at Coast Farm and Ranch in Cornelius. They have all these varieties of potatoes, then it's gonna bring some.
But they're not organic.
I don't know that.
They're like,
one of them-
if they don't say they're organic, then they're not organic. I
Right.
can tell you that.
One side said organic and one side did not.
And did you notice that the organics were twice as expensive as the not
I didn't
organic?
pay attention because I wasn't sure, I didn't think we were allowed to buy them if they weren't this, whatever this name is.
You can buy them for your own use, but for farm use, I like to buy the seeds and the seed stock because I know what to look for and I have I know what we need and the budget and all that, so. But
Well,
yeah,
I wasn't gonna charge anybody.
no, that's fine. It's just we also don't wanna have more than what we can use, but yeah, when I buy seed potatoes, I wanna buy organic, and that's why I said unfortunately the Yukon Gold I couldn't get. I went to 3 places in Portland, and I was done driving around, so Lowe's it is.
Seed or seed stock, potato?
Seed potato,
That I could have picked up.
so.
Okay, one final